It is time to engage. And here we are talking about the mid-season premiere, the winter premiere of Star Trek Discovery. And this is weird because it's not a 22-episode season where we're halfway through this giant, exploration of a huge season. It was like 9 episodes. Then they stopped so they could bring out another 6 episodes. And you're like, all right, okay, different. Maybe, it's not Game of Thrones 10 episodes in a row. It's not, Buffy the Vampire Slayer where you're sitting through, you've got a solid back half of the season. We've only got 5 more episodes to talk about after this. So it's kind of weird. But if you're going to come back in style. And come back with Jonathan Frakes. Come back with William T. Riker directing the episode. And guys, it was an exciting way to start the winter. So let's get into this. I have Sonia and Vanya here to talk about Despite Yourself, episode 10 of season 1 of Star Trek Discovery. Let's get into it, shall we? The characters and where they are. Finally answered. What did you think about the reveal that they are in the mirror universe and they called it that? Vanya?
I thought it was actually, for Discovery, it was good because they cut to the chase. Because sometimes Discovery is we know what you're doing. We're aware.
Yeah, we're already there. Catch up.
Yeah, and so I think they were kind of like, yeah, we respect you guys. We're just going to say it. You know what I mean? Because you know already, and we did know. And we were right, and that's okay. I thought it was good that they just...
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, we did get a pretty good hint from Riker when he was like, oh yeah, I got to direct an episode, and the mirror universe is really cool. And you're like, what? Okay, I guess there's a mirror universe episode coming.
Thanks, Frakes, yeah.
So at the end of episode 9, when it was like, where are we? And you're like, I think I know.
Yeah.
Sonia, what did you think?
What did I think? I think
walking into the mirror universe. How did it feel?
Was one of the most enjoyable Discovery episodes. That's for sure. I had a lot of fun watching the characters act differently.
Captain Killy.
Yes. There was some humor there. There was also interesting storylines. There was a loss that was... So a lot happened.
Yeah, I mean, I yelped and jumped out of my seat twice. Yeah. One of them was around the loss that happened in this episode, kind of reminding us that this is not Star Trek The Next Generation. Well, I mean, Tasha Yar. So reminding us that this is not Deep Space Nine. Well, Jadzia. Reminding us that this is not...
Was season 6.
Voyager, I mean, Kes kind of fucked off. But I guess, people died in Star Trek all the time. It's not the original series.
Right.
That's basically the only time that people didn't die.
And there was something else. Vanya just said that the creators respected the viewers and said, okay, we're just going to tell you what we're doing here. You know what we're doing. We're going to tell you what... And there was another moment, Matt, if you want to talk about it. How much do we want to talk about here tonight?
Oh, we're digging all the way in.
Okay.
So there were 2 yelps.
Yes.
I mean, there was a Klingon yelp and there was a Doctor yelp. And one of them, I was surprised it happened so fast because we were all expecting Tyler to be Vaak. So I was just surprised with the abruptness, but then I felt like you said, it was the writers being like, shit, you guys you already know,
okay, but
so let's get it out there.
Yeah. Is it possible he's not Vaak? Is there the possibility that he's not Vaak and that they just...
I mean, I guess, but what a clumsy, weird, circuitous way for him to not be Vaak.
Yes,
he's
and why are the red herrings? Then it makes you think, why all these red herrings?
Well, and we were wondering, not just is he Vaak, but how is he Vaak in the previous season. But now that, Dr. Culbert had the chance to really get in there and be like, oh, wow, your bones have been smashed, your memory engrams have been changed, and it's like, oh, so this is the body of Vaak in some form, or else they wouldn't have smashed all of his bones and reshaped him into a human.
They layered him.
Yeah.
And I liked seeing Culber, Culber's a good doctor. He's really good, and that made the loss better to see that he is good at what he does. That he took him seriously. He came like, it's what you wanted him to do. I was just like, in Star Trek, when people get hurt, they go to the doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he actually did go to the doctor and say, what's wrong with me?
Yeah. And it was good to know that he had been to the doctor, and Culber ran a bunch of low-level scans to make sure he was okay.
Yeah.
I would like to think when you come out of months of torture from a Klingon prison, you get more than the cursory, like, how your reflexes, you're great.
Yeah.
I'm surprised more deeper scans weren't done before,
Yeah.
but it was nice in this episode that it was explained.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, by the way, there was a reason we missed this.
Right. And that they, like, I like to... Yeah, so then when he's killed, it's kind of like, oh, man, he's, like, competent and good.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
actually
Like,
really
it makes
liked him
it
in this
worse.
episode more.
Which is great.
I liked when he was standing up to Lorca.
Yeah.
We had all those moments to like Dr. Culber, and then, man, when Vaak Tyler just grabbed him and finished him, shit.
And Stamets now. No,
Yeah.
Stamets.
And Stamets wasn't even, like, there enough to emote his loss. The fact that he was there, but kind of not, was sort of brutal. It was a very interesting character episode on a lot of different levels. And we certainly got to see another side of Tilly and another side of Lorca.
Yeah.
And when Tilly introduced her chief engineer, and Lorca puts on the Scottish accent that is so Mr. Scott.
Yes,
I was
special
smiling
moment.
like top to bottom.
It was a
That
special
was
moment.
really fun because I was thinking, oh, he's gonna go British, or he's gonna be Malfoy.
Yeah.
And then he went a different British than I had in mind.
Yeah, and
he went Scottish.
That whole scene is pretty incredible. Like,
Yeah.
just everybody making so many mistakes and all the layers of that. That's really great.
It was quite enjoyable. Computer?
Well, Jody is saying that he thinks this is the first time the term mirror has been used in the Star Trek series, not counting episode titles.
Yeah.
Fans call it the mirror universe, but he thinks this is really the first time it's been spoken in the episode.
I would have to agree. It was referred to as the alternate universe a lot in Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
They had all kinds of euphemisms. It's a bit like if they were to use the word zombie on The Walking Dead.
Right.
Like, you can call it a walker, a biter, you can call it anything you want, just apparently you can't say zombie. But it's weird that in a moment before Kirk gets accidentally slipped over into Mirror Kirk's shoes, that we are A, aware of the mirror universe with Starfleet, and we are B, calling it that. It's really weird. And, I mean, this episode was written by someone who's never written Star Trek before. But, I don't know. This obviously had to be approved by the showrunners. It's frigging weird to be like, we're in this mirror universe.
And not only did they do that, there's, like, the scene where Tilly's in the mirror.
Yeah.
And then they show her in the mirror, and then she says the word mirror, and I'm like, wow, you're like really doing it. Like,
yeah,
you're really...
this is going all the way home with this mirror idea. Yeah, I found that off-putting. Was it Joey that said that? Yeah, I agree. It really caught me off guard and threw me for a loop. But if they continue to call it that, it's going to be weird that the first time in canon anyone has transferred themselves to the mirror universe. Because remember, in the Enterprise episodes that took place in the mirror universe, it was just in the mirror universe. There was no humans that went back and forth, just starships. So it really begs a question. If they, the first time they went through, called it the mirror universe, like, Discovery has to either, everyone on there has to forget, or they all have to die. It's just becoming even more ominous for the members of the USS/ISS Discovery that, this has never happened before, and now no one's ever going to hear about it again.
It's like the greatest gag order
Yeah.
ever in Star Trek.
What kind of gag order could that be? Computer?
Jeff is saying, like in the Watchmen movie where they call themselves the Watchmen.
Yeah, basically. I mean, it's weird because the Minutemen... Anyway, different thing altogether. But yeah, absolutely right, Jeff. The computer, one more thing?
Yeah, so Steve is saying, what if they end up coming back with Vaak from the alternate universe? Now that
Whoa!
would be something.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
And then you'd have to put that actor in the same makeup that you get to... Or you could put anybody in that makeup, really, because you can't tell it's him. Anyway, that's a very interesting point. I specifically want to get into what was going on with this. We kind of get to see the Defiant on the screen,
Yes.
but like a wireframe spline of it. Now, bearing in mind, this is 100 years, 110 years after the ship has made the universe/time jump.
Right.
It did not look like a Constitution-class vessel. I mean, it kind of did, but there were weird things happening with the pylons, and there was something really strange happening on the saucer, where there's, like, chunks missing. And, I mean, maybe the people of the Terran Empire got really presumptuous, and they're like, this is from the future, but we could do better.
Right.
And they started changing it? I don't know.
Maybe.
Or somebody at Discovery got a little like, I can do better than Gene Roddenberry, and just like made a new constitution. I'm really curious when there was that conversation that happened in December about, oh, there's a constitution in the back half of the season. Is that it? What do you think? Do you think we're going to actually see the Defiant? Is that the palace of the Emperor? Where is this going to happen?
And who is the Emperor?
Is it Hoshi? Is it 140-year-old Hoshi?
Oh, man. Oh,
That'd be
man.
cool.
That'd be good.
That'd be really
I'm
cool.
hoping it's Philippa.
Okay, I can't stop thinking about the fact that Michelle Yeoh might be coming back.
Well, they keep using her name in the credits.
Right? And
No.
like that she's
missed
always
that.
there. She's
Yeah.
always in the credits. And I'm thinking, will she come back? You know, like
Now's our chance.
How
I mean,
would that work?
well, if Philippa has risen to the rank of Emperor in the alternate universe,
in the alternate universe,
or really
yes.
just is
Or-
rocking some kind of ship. I mean, she's not in charge of the Shenzhou.
Right.
So, I always find it funny in the Mirror Universe how young all of these captains have to be because they keep murdering their... It's like a bunch of 18-year-olds running everything.
Yeah.
Well, as soon as it was Tilly, I was just like, that makes so much sense, right? Because our Tilly is ambitious. Like, she has it in her mind what she wants to do.
Yep.
Like, she wants to be captain. She said it right away. I liked that actually went back to like early episodes that she's like decided I'm going to be a captain, and then we get to see this Tilly like she's also wants to be in charge.
And we saw Stamets call her captain.
Right.
So I don't know how much the mycelial network has been telling him people's ranks, but he was aware of Captain Killy potentially.
Yeah, and
which
I like
is
that.
interesting.
I like that they're like kind of the same. I know Tilly's like we're nothing alike, but I'm like,
oh, you're very similar.
I love that.
Yeah.
And then remember how good she was.
Yes.
I was just like,
Yeah.
well, you're kind of too good at that.
Yeah.
Good at that,
Exactly.
right?
And it's interesting that the Mirror Universe costumes were always like a little bit more midriff or a little bit more mostly midriff, I guess.
Yeah.
Kind of cleavy too.
Yeah.
But this one is like, I'm gonna wear armor everywhere but here.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that like Burnham's got a full
Completely covered.
breast plate, but Killy's like maybe customized hers. I don't know. It's kind of fun. I want to know what the Emperor looks like. Is this like, does the Emperor just get to wear whatever she or he wants? Or is the Emperor also dressed in these outfits? Because we've never really seen a sitting Emperor. It's always like, oh, we'll talk about the Emperor, or now I declare myself the Emperor. But it's never been like, oh, hey, Emperor, and there she is.
Are they going to get into that? I also wonder how long they're going to be there.
I mean,
what is
one more
the
episode.
show?
and I wonder what the ISS Discovery is doing on our side. Like, that's the other thing. When Kirk and his away team was accidentally transported to the Mirror Universe, Spock was like, shit, no, there's something wrong with these people, lock them up. But that's not going to work when you're flying the most advanced ship in the fleet. No one can lock it up. It's going to be interesting to see.
Is it still the most advanced ship in the fleet without Stamets? I mean, can it
Well, I
still,
wonder if it's got a spore drive.
Oh, you know what? It can
Because they don't have the kind of science. They don't have the kind of focus on science in the Terran Empire that they have in the Federation, and yet they always have exactly the same toys. I never understand that. Computer?
Derek is saying that he thinks it's a different Mirror Universe from the original series due to the symbol of the Empire being different from Mirror Mirror and In a Mirror Darkly.
Solid point. The Terran Empire symbol is usually just the sword through the planet Earth.
Yeah.
But the thing that I find interesting is that Nothing's the same in this show.
Yeah.
So it makes me really wonder. Like these armored breastplate outfits that look way more practical than what the people on regular Discovery are wearing, and way more practical than kind of anyone has ever worn in Star Trek. Like it's straight up armor all the time. I feel like you've got a good point. It's a different logo. It's a different symbol. But then so is the Star Trek star.
Is, even an hour.
Yeah.
Sure, it's different from our usual, what we're used to.
Yeah.
Like, everything's different. Klingons different, everything. Like you said before, maybe is the one that we call our even that?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, the thing about it being the prime timeline is that they haven't specifically said there are 2 mirror universes and there are 2 our universes in the prime timeline because we're in a multiverse, so get used to the marching band uniforms. Like, I don't know.
It's too confusing for me. Is Jonathan Frakes directing the second?
I don't think so. I think that might have been it for Johnny.
Yeah, I think that's it.
I think that was it.
Because there is a to be continued. There's a second part coming.
I mean,
right?
this is gonna.
Well, I mean, yeah,
the whole thing is sort of a
like one
15-part,
big story.
Yes, except in the mirror universe, I'm thinking, oh, you know what? It could be that they're there for more than 2 episodes.
Yeah.
Why not?
I hope they're there
DS9
for the whole
DS9
back end of this season.
That's what I was thinking. Like, are they gonna just be there
for the whole season? Yeah, like DS9, the last one where they revisit 10 or 12 episodes, and they were all to be continued.
Yeah, and it was even more serialized than DS9 tended to be. Computer?
Steve says he yelled at the TV when he saw the Terran Empire insignia.
Yeah.
He also says that he thought Frakes did a good job.
Oh,
yeah. I thought Frakes did a good job in every scene except for that second scene where there's
The
like a
spinny
circular
spin,
spinny spin,
spin.
because I direct movies, so I could like tell that they were breaking a bunch of rules that make an audience understand what's happening.
Yeah.
And partway through, I turned to Sonia and I was like, what do you think of this?
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, I stopped paying attention a while ago.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because there's this thing called the axis of interaction, or the 180 rule. And what it means is when someone talks in this direction on screen, the other person should talk in this direction on screen. It's a weird little thing you might not have ever noticed, but it's what makes it all make sense in a conversation scene. And Frakes got so much coverage of people spinning and spinning and spinning, but the editor wasn't able to keep that axis making sense. And so you have a bunch of people talking in this direction to each other, and they're not like making eye contact. It really disconnects you.
Okay, I didn't know that's what thanks for explaining it.
That's what was happening. Okay. And, without a wide shot, without a master shot that you can jump back to and then get back into it, you get disoriented and a bit unfocused.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Frakes got to play with some really cool toys, and he was saying, I read in a Rotten Tomatoes editorial little article about how it feels more like making a movie than directing any Star Trek ever did.
Yeah.
But if you had the resources, it's a shame that very early scene in the episode doesn't fire on all cylinders, because there's a way to do that right, to get the rhythm of the speaking and the camera and the follow. Like, there's a way to do that, and if it's really like making a movie, you have the resources and the time to make that rhythm work. And I just felt like that scene
it is one
was
of
missing it.
Ones visually that failed the episode a little bit there, because the rest of the episodes are actually quite tight. Like, like there's a lot, and I really love that, like seeing their faces up close and like seeing like only like this amount of them. That's excellent. Like, even the mediums were like pretty tight. And then all of a sudden that, like, if you look at that, it's like in a separate episode. It's like, doesn't even belong in that episode.
It was weird. And maybe Frakes did that scene and was like, oh man, I don't want to do that again. That didn't really work for me.
Yeah.
Maybe he felt that. Because to me, the star of that entire scene was the motion-tracked gobbledygook in between them. And it's like, how much can you stare at star charts that kind of don't matter? You could have turned them off and the scene would have been the same scene.
I was with Sonia, like, I barely remember what they were talking about in that scene.
I remember when they went to the window.
Yeah.
And then they were talking there. I remember what they said.
Because things started to make sense.
Yeah, because they were
setup.
with each other.
Yeah.
It's like they weren't even in the same room before, and then they were all of a sudden with each other.
Yeah.
But even with the fight, like, it's like quite tight, like and then it's like that scene doesn't. It's
what
like
about
doesn't
Ash and the Klingon?
Yeah. What did you think about that scene that we had between Ash and his torturer / lover?
You always want, Starfleet to like make good choices, and then when he opened that door, when he opened the force field, I was like, oh man, like, why are you doing? But it makes sense because he's like a sleeper, like he's it's not him.
It's
Yeah,
not him.
and can we talk a little bit about security?
Yeah.
Because there's just an open button and,
Yeah.
just a close button.
Just a button. I was like, how did he even trap her back in there? Like,
Yeah.
why isn't she just out?
I mean, I guess
Why
he
did
is-
she leave? You know,
he is
like,
the
why did
chief
she
of
exit?
he is the chief of security. The terrible choice, but he's
So they have his fingerprint.
so maybe there was like a biometric thing that happened there, but it just felt like a
Even-
dude hits open and that's it.
even like almost every Star Trek I've seen where there's like a barracks, like a prison or whatever, they always even just have like a yellow shirt or a red shirt or whatever, just there.
Yeah.
There's usually
Just
a
there.
guard.
You'd have to kick them out to be alone. Like,
Yeah.
usually there's just a guard.
Yeah,
Like, he's just all by himself in there.
I was very very curious.
Discovery.
for sure.
This show always tries to do a lot, right? And don't we notice they try to do a lot, and maybe that's why they miss out on these things that make sense.
And it's hard to say whether it's not knowing how it should be, and with Jonathan Frakes, there's no excuse for that,
Yes.
or deciding not to do it that way.
Right.
It's hard to say. Computer?
Steve says that in the elevator scene, he thought the reaction of Burnham after killing was spot on.
Yeah.
That was perfect.
That was a pretty beautiful moment. And the fact that she has been responsible for this guy's death twice now.
Yeah.
Jesus,
And
Burnham.
I really do. Maybe it's Frakes, but I like the pacing of this episode. Like,
Yeah.
just get to it. Like, I mean, I like that. It's just like clicked along because you knew that he was gonna want to kill her.
Yeah.
Because you know that he
He's
took her
ambitious.
spot.
He's already
You
the
know he
captain.
took her spot. And
Yeah.
like, I like how it wasn't like a drawn out
First chance.
You know, they get to the bridge and there's a whole thing, and you know, it just the first chance he gets, he tries to kill her, and it was like the fight was good, and
Yeah.
and then her face, but also it led to the fact that she, you know, it was such a great start for her being there.
Yeah.
You know? Like
First thing she does is stone cold murder someone. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Now,
She's
speaking
good
of
Terran.
speaking of stone cold, can we talk about the way Lorca decided he didn't want, like, to have someone carefully cut his face up?
Yes.
But like seconds before anyone could potentially see him, he smashes his own face into a wall. Wow.
Maybe that was better than maybe their technology. They're not
I mean,
Dr. Bashir there to turn it surgically
To make it all
transfer-
pretty.
To make it
Yeah.
all pretty. That's
And
right.
I guess, you know, it never did swell up, which I was hoping. Like, I was hoping we'd see Lorca getting all swollen. And can we also talk about the fact that Ash and Michael
Yep.
are, like, getting it on
Yeah.
in her quarters while Captain Lorca is in a pain box?
Yes.
Just,
Yes. That
just
was-
in a pain, like...
I was like,
He's going to be the captain again in a minute.
Yeah.
You probably want to...
And that made
Rush.
sense. That made sense for Ash. It didn't make sense for Michael
No.
because we know what probably
Yeah.
will happen with Ash, but I can't imagine Michael will turn.
Well-
You know, do you know what I mean? Like she is who she is.
Unless Lorca is Mirror Lorca.
right.
If this isn't our Lorca,
Yes.
Okay.
that's the one thing that I think would make a lot of sense. Somebody should take a look at the quantum frigging resonance of Lorca. Because
Yeah.
apparently, inside of like 5 minutes of showing up in another universe, you can just be like, hey look, I happened to check the quantum resonance of this universe and it's off. And that is something that like nobody's ever looked at ever.
Yeah.
And only this crew ever did. And they're the first ones there.
That was when I reached like my nerd pinnacle, was in 2017 when I wrote you and said I had a dream that Lorca is Mirror Lorca.
Yeah.
And we were both like, yeah, you were like, yeah.
Yeah, that's probably
Guys,
it.
that would be cool. You know what? That would be cool.
Right?
That would be cool.
I mean,
But-
if he had a goatee, it would be even better. Shame.
No, I would like that.
Computer?
Jeff wants to give a shout out for Lorca's bad boy fugitive outfit.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
I like the
It's sexy,
We were talking about how
outfit.
that's like peak Lorca.
Yeah.
We've seen like beat up in the brig Lorca, and it just looked weird because it's like unzipped marching band Lorca. And then we've seen him in his silly outfit, but to see him like gangster Lorca,
So cool.
pretty like Malcolm Reynolds Lorca,
Like his like
it's good.
Blade Runner Lorca.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a good look. It was a good look, and I feel like if he got to do his Scottish accent
Yeah.
for the whole rest of the series in that outfit, we'd have a better show. Right? Scottish Lorca in a trench coat. I'd take that.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Computer?
Derek thinks that Burnham sitting in the captain's chair as if she was queen of the castle was beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even though it's sort of a shitbox, like, she's on the Shenzhou, which is not a great ship.
Yeah.
Although, speaking of ships, something very interesting happened this week, and it was the canon release of the scale length of the USS Discovery. Now, the length of the Discovery is pretty ridiculous because it's got those, like, chopstick nacelles that just go on for years, but it's a long-looking ship, and it's got a saucer section, which a contemporary to the Discovery, the Crossfield class ship, is the Constitution class ship, and they both have saucer sections, so there's like a derivative styling going on there, and so you would think that because as time goes on, these ships get bigger. Yeah. You would think that the Discovery, maybe because it's a bit newer, would be a bit bigger than a Constitution-class ship, but maybe would be smaller than an Excelsior. Sure. Because when Uhura looks into that starbase in Star Trek III and they see that beautiful new Excelsior, they all look at it and they go, that's a big ship. Yeah. And not like, that's an important ship. A physically large ship is what they mean. Yeah. The funny thing is that the Discovery is longer than the USS Enterprise E. That's messed up. Because the Enterprise E comes out in like 100 years and is this epic, impressive, even bigger than the Enterprise D, even bigger than C, bigger than B, the biggest. And this ship is longer than anything that comes out for 100 years.
Well, that's the question we always have, right? With the Discovery, like this whole show is like,
how canon is this, really?
Or are they just like, whatever, we're just doing whatever we want?
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit feels like that.
One thing that's got to be the same is the backstory, the way the alternate Mirror Universe backstory. Because after we saw the show, Matt, I went back and I watched the A Mirror Darkly, because you mentioned how many touch points there were between the two, and so one of the coolest things is the fact that they're both based on the premise that at first contact, Ephraim Cochrane does not welcome the Vulcans.
He just shoots the hell out of them,
and takes over, and that's how the humans get access, get into space, get technology, and get the power that they need to take over.
And I've got to say, that brutal way of stealing people's technology seems to maybe compensate for the fact that they don't really care about science. And like, if you bring a ship from our present 100 years into our past, for them, they might reverse engineer that and keep up without having to do the R&D themselves.
Right.
I mean, that is the only explanation I can think of for why there's two Discoveries. I mean, why would this warlike group of people who don't really have an R&D bone in their body do any of the work to build the Discovery unless they have the advantage of having a Constitution-class vessel in their midst for 100 years? Like, that could explain how they managed to stay so advanced, and it could also explain why the Terran Empire falls so quickly after Spock takes out Mirror Kirk, or depending on how much you like the New Voyages and continues storylines, sends Kirk off to live happily on his own.
Matt, I have to ask.
Yeah?
Do you think that the creators of Discovery are thinking about this as much as, say, you and Vanya think about the canon? And
I hope. Really, because the showrunners of this show made Roswell, and I freaking loved Roswell. I hold the showrunners of this show in high esteem. Not in Star Trek esteem, but in high esteem as storytellers.
Sure, I feel like my hope is like it's like going to be like any other Star Trek show, really, that it'll have like it'll grow the beard, like it'll like second season they'll tap into what the fans are saying, and and they'll make some changes potentially. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe.
But still kind of have some of their own stuff,
There's
and then also be a little bit more canon. Hopefully.
there are other elements. Like I found this episode to have a little bit of the relentlessness of the first few, and I think it had to do with, for example, music. I find that even in the moments when they are not battling, the music
It's very intense.
it's very intense. There was no respite, even in that regard, and it's a very dark show. It's a very everything is dark, and so.
Did you laugh in this episode?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think we laughed when Saru. Oh, went right out of my head.
What, Sarah?
No, there were some. There were
Tilly.
some,
No, when
he
Tilly
says-
is Captain Killing. Well, that's not very
Very
exciting.
inventive.
Yeah.
yeah. Like I feel like Tilly was the sole source of humor in this episode
Yeah.
again, and that we're really relying on that to keep this
That's
show light enough to be Star Trek.
Right.
And in episodes where she does not feature prominently, they are dark and morose episodes.
Yeah, that's true.
And I really feel like that's a thing that the tone of this show, the more Tilly we get, the more Trek it feels. Which is weird because the Tilly character is not a quintessentially Trek character because she has like some kind of neat Aspergery spectrum-y elements to her character, but everyone else is so dark that one goofball kind of averages everything out to feel a little
She
Trekkier.
has like those she has like some data elements, like some because of that awkward. She's awkward. She has some of those elements of the characters like that.
Yes, I was thinking
But
of
she's human.
Yeah.
So it doesn't. It's not the same. Quite the same.
And we get a little bit of humor from Saru, but we get it inadvertently. But when you were talking about, and I thought of Saru, I thought of can we go back to Vaak
Yeah.
for a second? Okay, I thought of that moment when Saru's feelers go up.
And it was right when
Ash
he came.
walks in.
When Ash
Yes.
walked in,
Yeah.
I was like,
So I wonder where that's gonna go.
That ganglia.
So I want to know. Saru's gonna have to act on it now. We're gonna have to see him start thinking about it, questioning it.
He's got to draw that parallel.
Yeah,
at some
he
point.
doesn't. He wouldn't have noticed, right? Because something else shifted, like right after Ash got there.
Oh.
So he might not. He might have thought it was something else.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he hasn't connected the two yet.
Yeah, and maybe it's because Vaak is starting to come out
Yeah.
that he's feeling the threat from Ash because he
Dad's
hadn't. We haven't really noticed a pattern in the past where Ash just rolling up beside Saru would cause the threat ganglia to do its thing.
No, but it's because he was just in the brig,
Mhm.
and I think he's just like he's just spoken Klingon. For
Yeah.
fuck's sake, you know what I mean? So I think it was just like on the forefront, and that's why it happened.
And he sounded like Vaak, which is interesting because it seems like there's a lot of awful tooth application and appliance that is happening for Vaak to sound like that.
Yeah.
And yet he managed to sound like that without it, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I was impressed with that because I mean we're all pretty much sold on the fact that this is the same actor, right? Right.
Because they hid who was playing Vaak.
Mm-hmm.
So-
And at some point, Sharif Iqbal is.
Yeah.
We're going to admit that one of these people does not exist.
Right. Yeah, and that they're the same.
Yeah.
At some point, it's going to be like IMDb. He's the same. person.
Yeah, they have to revise that at some point.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing will be, at that point, it will have become completely clear that the one and only reason the Klingons were redesigned was to
Just
try to trick us. Yeah.
Oh,
Red
to be
hair?
able to disguise them all.
Because Michael Dorn, in and out of that makeup,
Is Michael-
looks like the same cat.
Yeah, sure.
It's just like a couple of things going
Yeah.
on. It's like a Bajoran. It's me!
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you gotta be careful how much stuff you cover up if you're gonna
Yeah,
be like,
that's
it's not
true.
the same guy! So I feel like that was a key element. Make their heads really warped so we can't figure out a head
Yeah.
shape. Make their eyes really receded so we can't really catch his eyes. Change the nose, give him double nostrils, change the lips,
Yeah.
like both sides of the lips. That seems to be what's going on. Computer?
Steve would like to see more focus on the bridge crew. He says we hardly know them.
Yes, and it was interesting to see that that some of the Shenzhou Bridge crew was back, and we got to see some people without their head appliances.
Yeah.
We didn't get to see TV head though.
No.
I was
what is
really
happening
hoping when we got back to the Shenzhou, we would see TV
But on
head.
Shenzhou, aren't they only supposed to be
They're only humans,
Yes.
and that's probably why. It's
Right.
unfortunate. I wasn't sure if TV head was like a human with a TV head or an alien where everyone has TV heads. Like it's like in Saga, where they've all got TV heads. I don't know. So maybe TV head race is a race, or are they androids? If so, I imagine the TV heads would be like, you could hire a TV head to be on your... I don't know. It'd just be like a machine that the Terrans could use.
That redheaded, I don't know, the one that was on the Shinju who got injured. When I saw her on, like, in the alternate universe, I was like, oh, that's gonna be... I feel like, I wonder if they're gonna address, like, they've never really addressed her and
Burnham and what their relationship is.
She was sitting in the captain's chair.
Yeah.
When Burnham came in
she had the bridge. Because I guess...
Connor was out.
Yeah, Connor was out. Saru would never have been on that bridge.
Right.
And it would have been Burnham, then Connor, then her. So she would be number 1, and now she would have been busted down to number 3, but then Connor got the knife, so now she's still number 2.
First officer.
Yeah, so I wonder what their relationship is.
I wonder if that's going to come up at all.
Computer?
Joey's saying that the character we're talking about, I'm assuming TV Head, is a human female, according to his...
I think TV Head was a female. Yeah, and I mean, there's also the other android character on the Discovery Bridge.
Yeah.
Which is like a different android or like altered human. They're not really going into too much depth on what she is. I did hear through some, because it's filmed in our city, I heard through some people that there was an actress who was excited that she was playing a precursor to Data. She kept calling him Data, which is infuriating, but Data, she was a precursor to Data, which is interesting because I don't know if she's like an early Sung type prototype or if it's just like a different invention of an android. Either way, it's weird that there's an android before Data. But there we have it. And let's talk for a moment, because you and I were discussing the sheer size of the bridge on the Discovery. Because there was a moment where Lorca was like having a muttery chat on one side of the bridge, and nobody on the other side of the bridge could hear it. It's like, if Picard was having a chat with Wesley, Worf would frigging hear it. It's just weird that it's like a football field in here.
Well, sometimes somebody will speak, and I'll be like, "Oh, you're there! Like, you're there!
You're
like,
way in the background.
There all that time? Like, why are you even talking? Like, just be somewhere else. I don't know. It needs to like."
Yeah, you gotta bring it in, guys. Bring it in. It's a little weird.
I'm like, who are you?
It feels a bit more like the CIC in Battlestar Galactica, where there's like 3 bleachers back. There's like the backup to Duala,
and that makes sense.
And it's like you need that guy.
Never hear those people speak.
Yeah, they're silent.
Good.
Yeah, they're just hanging out. But it's interesting because there are all those faces on that bridge.
And go ahead, please.
I was going to say, and that makes it expensive. Because it's like, shit, we can see 6 people deep, so we need all those people for this shot.
Well, what about, and guys, I'm just thinking about the Klingon ships, which were...
A palace.
What is happening?
I always felt like the bridges on the Klingon ships in the show were so much smaller than
on the old Klingon ships.
The old stuff,
It felt like you were in a submarine and you'd hit your head on anything on those Klingon ships. But the new ones, it's like you're sitting in a palace that happens to be in flight. And even when they were on Cole's ship, you were like, this is a big ship. Like, they don't make little Klingon ships anymore.
Like, where is everybody else? Like,
But they're all on the ship.
Like, the whole bridge takes up the majority of the ship.
It's just one room.
That doesn't,
the whole thing's one room. Like, engineering is over there. That's Bob.
Murphy beds.
Yeah, they sleep on there. Yeah, maybe. Although, going back to the size of the Discovery, it's an interesting idea that the ship is this incredibly large.
Right.
Because they did have like a cavern in it where they were growing mycelial spores.
Sure.
So it's not like an aeroponics bay. They have trees and like an enormous space, a cavernous space in the middle of that ship. And when you consider the volume that would take up in the ship, I really wonder how much of it is living quarters, how much of it is engineering, and how much of it is their warp core. Like, this ship is warp capable, but it also has this spore engine in it, which the Glenn also had. And I assume if there's a cross field out there, which there should be, that ship also has the ability to have a spore drive in it. All of this was mobilized really fast when you consider the fact that Burnham was only in jail for 9 months, and all of these ships were like immediately released and somehow all built with these spore drives in them. Maybe the reason we don't see a crossfield is because that ship was the prototype, and then everyone went to war, and they were like, oh, well, we've got these two that aren't quite finished, let's spore them up.
Right.
And then the crossfield is just, like, dry docked for now. But it's just weird that the Glenn was the sister ship, and it's like the other sister ship has never been spoken of. I find that strange. The ship logic in this show, it doesn't feel like it's as tight as, like, the logic we got to see in this episode, where it was the Shenzhou's back. We're getting to see the idea of a mirror universe explained really carefully, because we've never heard about them resonating quantumly different in any different way.
Yep. That's right.
In fact, you and I were talking about the fact that after Tyler uses that cool, very cool, but in no way Star Trek-like technology to zap out that memory core and then go into the Vulcan core inside of the Klingon disk to discover what this universe is like. What if that was like Inglourious Bastards? What if that was just a movie about the history that's not right? And they'd be like, "Oh man, Hitler died in a firefight when the bear Jew shot him." And you'd be like, "That's not history. They did everything in this episode based entirely off of one hard drive on one ship. That could have been some dude's BitTorrent drive."
Yeah, and he was gonna show himself, like that was so close. When she's like, "Oh no,
you can't do that."
You can't do, like that close, really?
Yeah, it's
like let her go through all the info first.
Yeah, it's really interesting how quickly things accelerated in this episode, and I wonder if that's going to be something that we're going to see throughout this season, or if that's something that was just like, let's do a little soft reboot on what this show's about, and get us into the mirror universe. Computer?
Just a reminder from Joey, the USS Glenn did not grow their spores, they collected naturally growing spores. That's how they were able to jump farther than the Discovery.
Oh, that's interesting. So if they weren't growing their own spores, what were they doing with that big giant space in their ship? And why would they not both do the same thing? All of this is very strange. And not so, I think, well thought out.
No, Matt, I wish that they were thinking about this. They were committed to the logic and the, as you are. The creators.
I mean, when you consider the fact that Star Trek, the original series, was winging it, trying to figure stuff out, and like maybe everybody has a different insignia, maybe those insignias on different ships mean this one's non-commissioned officer, maybe this, like, they were making up the universe as they went along 50 years ago, 60 years ago. But now, this shit is in stone.
Yes.
So, if you want to call this Star Trek Discovery, we really need to see all this stuff line up right, or else you should have made a show called Space Hop Discovery. Like, there are certain things that are just not quite gelling. Whether you want to say Mirror Universe along with us or not, that's not what makes it necessarily Star Trek. Which is going to bring us, I think, to deciding whether this episode...
Tracked it or wrecked
Shall
it.
we?
Wait, can I do it?
You sure can.
Yes.
Did it trek it, or did it wreck it? Computer?
Well, Steve says personally he felt this episode was the most Trek-like so far.
Interesting, the most Trek-like so far. There was a part of me that would agree with you. And I would say that's the part of me that enjoys like a rip-roaring episode of Enterprise, or a shoot-'em-up episode of DS9, or like yesterday's Enterprise.
Yeah.
Like those moments of violence that shine so brightly out of a philosophy show, because Star Trek is a philosophy show, and the violence pops, but then you start to think about what it means to be human when Best of Both Worlds has your captain. What does it mean to be human? And did that human cause all that damage, or was that human just a pawn? You know, there's philosophy even in the darkest episodes of good Star Trek. So Vanya, what did you think? Did this episode trek it, or did this episode wreck it?
It trekked it. It definitely trekked it. I feel like, I don't know, Discovery's getting better for me, like, as far as, like, trekking has been pretty consistent, for me, at least, in the last grouping of episodes, of probably, like, before. I usually say it Trek it. If you look at my record, like I think I Trek it.
It's got a pretty strong record.
Yeah.
It's true.
And so, I mean, I feel like it did. Obviously it's connecting to things that we know nostalgic, Mirror Universe is Star Trek, right? That's Star Trek's thing. You know what I mean? Like, no one else can take that away from Star Trek, right?
Yeah.
Like, that is, like, Mirror Universe is, like, Star Trek. When other people do it and other shows, something similar to it, we're like, that's like,
Star Trek.
That's Mirror Universe Star Trek. Yeah. We don't say it's their thing.
Yeah.
So, for me, it did Trek it in that regard. And I feel like the title, like, 2 of the episode, like...
Despite Yourself.
Yeah, Despite Yourself really went along with maybe, like, asking yourself, like, those questions about... Who are you really? Like, and, are you... It's funny, because at this stage in the show, I felt like this episode, maybe it's Frakes, like, they gelled more. Like, the crew was acting like more of a crew. Even though they weren't even acting
some of them were murdering each other.
Yeah. Even though they weren't even acting as themselves, like, half the episode, but they were, like, together, And so, for me, that was Star Trek.
Yeah, there was some good teamwork in this, which was very interesting. Sonia, correct it or wrecked it?
I have to say, tonight I'm going to say it tricked it. I'll say that, to what you were saying, parts of it felt very Discovery, parts of it felt very Star Trek. One of the things, ironically, that made it feel very Star Trek was that they, the women were the ones who had very, very strong roles in this.
Yeah.
And I really like that. And I also... like just thinking of the title, Despite Yourself. One of the I have fond memories of characters in the other shows being able to perform in ways that they never thought they would.
Mm-hmm.
They'd be challenged to be the captain, for example, and Tilly did that. So I thought, so yes, there were, and the Mirror Universe, of course. So for me, it felt like a Trek episode most of the time.
Cool. I'm gonna start by saying I really liked this episode. I yelped, I laughed, I jumped out of my seat. That's not what makes Star Trek, but it was really entertaining. There were cool moments where we got to see storylines pay off, and I liked that a lot. But this episode was kind of about nothing. Like there was no philosophical, oh shit,
No,
right,
that's
what
true.
would I do?
Yep.
Except for like, Burnham was in a death match. Of course she's gonna win. That's what you do in a death match. If she was like told that maybe he was going to attack her and she had to decide what to do about it, that would have been philosophy. But someone pulling a knife on you is survival. When we got to see Lorca get chucked in a pain booth, and nobody's even thinking about whether he's in that booth, that showed that all the teamwork that episode had meant nothing. Because nobody cares that he's in the really violent, painful brig. There was an element to this that felt like the crew really gelling, and I feel like Jonathan Frakes really made that happen. But to me, it felt like a violent episode of Voyager. It felt like Year of Hell. It didn't feel like the shining darkness of yesterday's Enterprise or Best of Both Worlds in the midst of a bunch of morality plays. There haven't been enough morality plays for me to look at this and be like, ooh, cool, stabby. It's like, every episode's stabby,
It's true.
so it doesn't, stand out. This episode isn't extra vicious, because in the pilot, a captain got stabbed through the heart. Like, we don't need more vicious. We need more Star Trek. We need more philosophy couched in science fiction to make this feel like Trek. And so this was a really cool, fun episode, but it totally wrecked it for me. From a Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry, are we telling a story about us in the future and how we can aspire to be better? No.
Okay.
We did not do that.
I agree that there's not enough context for me in any of these episodes.
Yeah.
I guess for me they feel like they're just trying to do too much.
Yeah.
Slow down, give us a little bit more context, give us a little bit more, give us some slow moments so that we can appreciate the other ones. Like, yes, Matt, what you're saying, you've articulated it very well.
Yeah.
That's what's always been missing for me in Discovery. And I think I told you today I'm gonna stop hoping that Discovery is gonna be one of my like a Discovery episode is going to be one of my favorite Star Trek episodes. I don't think that's ever going to happen, even if an episode does feel like a Star Trek episode to me in some ways.
Yeah, it's like Voyager has a few episodes that are great Star Trek, but it's still kind of a crap show. I mean, best captain. Janeway's my favorite captain, but those stories generally suck. And it's just not a great series.
I mean, for me, like, what I'm hoping with Discovery is that we're seeing new Star Trek. And this is one big sweeping story we have to sit through 15 episodes to get, that was the moral. That was the moral of the entire thing. You know what I mean? I don't think that's what's going to happen, really. Like, it's my wish. But I'm just hoping maybe we're seeing this differently than any other Star Trek.
Yeah.
They're tapping into what, Deep Space Nine started to do, with these big arcs, like huge arcs, like the whole season. And so
the Dominion Wars lasted several seasons.
Yeah,
but they were interspersed with human stories and different dilemmas.
When they went to the alternate universe too, one of the things that they played with was the idea that people were good. Like, there were people that are inherently good. Like, in both universes, it doesn't change, right? You're, like, if you're good, you're good. You know what I mean? Like, somewhere in there. That's kind of a cool concept for that, but we don't know what that's going to be like. Maybe they'll bring something like that.
Yeah, it would be nice to see, now that we've set this new stage, this is almost like a third pilot for the show, where we've got the whole crew ready, they're on a mission, they're in a place by themselves. It's like Voyager. Right. And so it'll be interesting to see how long it takes them to get home. And if they get home, maybe the show just exists in the Mirror Universe from now on.
Right.
It's not impossible that this becomes a Mirror Universe show, and the ISS Discovery got blown out of the sky, and that's why no one ever talks about it in our universe, and now we've got a Mirror Universe show.
And now we're like Game of Thrones, Star Trek? Like, you know what I mean? Where
Maybe.
it's just like always Mirror Universe?
Yeah, it's an interesting place that we're in now. And there are people who are saying, hey man, it took 3 years for DS9 to get good. It took 3 years for TNG to get good. You're totally right. It took 4 years for Enterprise to get good. And I feel like the idea that it can't be done any differently has been proven wrong by the Orville. The Orville gave us new characters in a familiar universe, but one that still had to be explained because it's not the Federation. And the Orville gave us really solid morality plays with characters we had just met, and we used those morality plays to meet those characters. And I feel like we are now 10 hours into Discovery, and we haven't gotten much of that. We know these characters pretty well. We're learning that Vaak and Tyler, like, there's a cool relationship there that they planted early. But honestly, we know these people now. We can start telling stories with these people. And they don't have to just be stab stories. They could be explore stories. And now that we're in this mirror universe, it's not the kind of universe you can just boldly explore. You're constantly trying to not die in it.
Right.
Computer?
Well, there's a lot of people who think it trekked it.
Great.
But Kirsty is lamenting that we did lose another major character with little acknowledgement.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. It was just, like, we haven't... the USS Discovery hasn't caught up with the fact that Culber's there on his, like... on the floor of his sickbay dead. It'll be really interesting to see when the ship acknowledges that. You know, when Yar died, everybody was there. It was like, oh, no, Yar! You're right, there's no acknowledgement with the characters yet.
We will discover it, and it just, like, that's the thing about Discovery. I feel like it's slow going. Like, everything is revealed, like, in this different way that you don't get with the regular Star Trek that we watch, where everything's, like, very episodic. You know what I mean?
If Culver died in a Mirror Universe Voyager episode, they would find the good Mirror Universe Culver and be like, hey, you should join us. And in fact, that happened with Harry Kim, basically. But they would do that, and then you'd be like, look, we got a new one, he's back, and then the bottle episode ends.
I'm hoping we get more Wilson Cruz, because we'll see him maybe as,
mirror him.
Culber, and maybe he'll be good.
Maybe. Computer?
Derek has a request that he says it would be nice to see the Orville do a mirror universe type story.
Yes! Oh, that would be so interesting. And then, like, that's the one show that could get away with it because they're already taking so many Star Trek tropes. It'd be like, of course you took that one. And then Everybody has a goatee. Everyone. I want to see Adriana Palicki with a goatee.
Yeah.
I want to see Isaac with a goatee. Everybody has a goatee. Except for the helmsman who's shaving it off. Just this part. He's only got chops. That'd be fun.
Funny.
Okay, guys, I think that pretty much wraps up this episode of Trek It or Wreck It. Thank you very much for being a part of it. And if you're watching this on Highball TV and you didn't get a chance to be a part of this live, join us on Facebook Live. We love the interaction we get to have with you. It's a really good time on here with, like, basically a dozen Star Trek fans at a time. Sure, you can only see 3 of us, but we've got the whole world for our audience at home, and it's great. So, if you are watching this live, you can catch the rest of these episodes on highball.tv. You can check everything we've done, which is compare Orville episodes, watch only Discovery episodes, watch only Orville episodes. This is a great spot for Trek. We love hanging out here with some Trek, and I'd like to acknowledge here the neck-snapping alien who's not an alien, and the Doctor, the diorama that we tried to put up for you. I hope you appreciated that for the whole show. That's it for today. Did you enjoy seeing that the whole time? So we'll see you next week, guys, for another episode.